Apple invests in the U.S., Apple News Plus cooks, and Apple Intelligence on the Vision Pro. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Slack. Discussions, questions, and answers, and a place to talk tech with your friends. The MacVoices Slack is available to all patrons of MacVoices. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices and join in. Well, the next one, I don't know if this is a major story or a non-story. When it first came out, this is the way it was written up, and this was from Ars Technica, that Apple promises $500 billion in U.S. investments in the wake of tariff threats. And it seemed like the first round of coverage this story got was that a deal had been cut, or it was implied that a deal had been cut when Tim Cook went to the White House and met with Trump. And then it was almost like the journalists went back and did more research and realized that this is pretty much in line with other representations Apple has made over the years about not only the amount of money they're investing in new facilities, but also the amount of money they're investing in new facilities in the U.S. as well. And so at some point, the conclusion I was reading tonight with on a couple of the later articles was that, okay, there might be a little bit more money coming to the U.S. Under this, but it was not kind of the windfall that it had been made out to be, because allegedly because of the meeting. So,
don't tell Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah, that came.
You'll hurt his feelings, Chuck.
Yeah,
you'll hurt his feelings if you tell him things like that. I kind of feel that moving factories here was not just initiated because the current president thought it was a good idea. I think these kinds of plans have been happening for a long time in terms of server farms and things like that, all of the trying to get the manufacturing domestic if they can, as much of it as they can. It just falls into place with this agenda.
That's the way I've kind of come. That's the stance I've come to, Marty, is that, and look, we all know Apple loves control, and it's a lot easier to control things in country than out of country. It takes international politics out of the game. So as long as it makes economic sense, it's just one more thing that they're doing here that doesn't have to be done somewhere else. Jeff?
Yeah. Okay. So my take on all this is in line with what was being reported later on that should have been reported in the beginning, but here we are. This isn't a new deal that was struck. This is just a continuation of Apple's ongoing plans. The part that doesn't fit with this at all was the statement that Trump made that Apple is stopping the building of factories in Mexico and bringing those to the United States. Apple doesn't have factories in Mexico. They haven't had any factory of any kind in Mexico for like 30 years or something.
If ever.
Well, they did have one factory that was making substandard keyboards, and that eventually got shut down. But yeah, as far as I know, that's the only manufacturing Apple ever did in Mexico, and they had no plans to build any manufacturing in Mexico. So whatever Apple is saying they're going to build in the United States now is not a shift from some other country. It's what they were already planning to build in the United States.
So if Tim is that good a politician and could spin it that way to the satisfaction of the White House, then fine. Webb also could not be here with us tonight, but he's in the chat room, and he points out, but $500 billion is a lot. And yeah, I agree with you, Webb. It just seems like again, from the articles I've read, that it's not necessarily that much more than Apple was already planning to spend.
But I would interject that, yes, maybe Apple was planning to spend it. And to me, one of the news items here was that they want to build a factory, or maybe in conjunction with Foxconn, Hon they want to build a factory for building servers, for doing AI inferencing that they want to build out. So, I think this is maybe more of a combination of a little bit of new information and then just wrapping up in one neat bow all the investments that they were planning to make. And I think there's value in that, and just letting the occupant in the White House know that Apple is investing, a lot of money in Webb's, words. $500 billion is a lot of money. I think it's over a 5-year period. That's still $100 billion a year. That's a hell of a lot of money invested in the U.S. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of tariff relief, later this spring, or certainly by WWDC time.
Yeah, Brian, you brought up something in our private chat too that that Mark just alluded to, but he didn't say specifically.
Yeah, kind of what Mark was just mentioning. In addition to the chips, it's also the servers for Apple Intelligence. And I was just thinking about just a couple weeks ago when we were talking about how much percent of Apple's revenue comes from services. I think that just continues to feed that idea as well, and how important those type of aspects are too for the company.
And if you put Apple Intelligence servers in the U.S., there's no question about where they are, as opposed to DeepSeek or some of the others, as to where the information is being sent. So,
right. And I'd also point out that Apple did, I think, famously back when they introduced their MacBook Pro, the cheese grater, model, that they were making that in a factory in Texas. So, obviously they're doing it for a higher end, products that they have the margin that can absorb a higher U.S. manufacturing cost. And again, for capital equipment, making servers here instead of, having people manufacture them, in China and then bring them in. I think they can easily afford to make them here, because servers don't have all the delicate parts and things that you see in so much in iPhone PCB assembly. So they can do that, and they can absorb that. And again, if it's a bartering chip to try to get tariff relief, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that chess game or poker game works out between Apple and the powers that be in Washington.
Eric?
Yeah, it also fixes that security problem of building machines outside of the country and bringing them in, or building any sort of AI system and trying to bring it into the country, because there's some restrictions on that as well. So there's not a question of, hey, what happened in the assembly? Did anything else get added? It's all built where you can keep an eye on everything.
Yeah. And may solve part of the tariff problem too.
Mm-hmm.
So
potentially.
But yeah, potentially. Stay tuned. I'm curious, was anybody excited over seeing that Apple News Plus is going to get restaurant views, recipes, and kitchen tips?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now because it's interesting. They seem to be pulling recipes from the different magazines that are already in the Apple Plus magazine. So your recipes come from Eating Well, and when I look at it, it's other ones that are coming from Good Food, Better Homes and Gardens, Real Simple, all recipes. All of these are kind of integrated into the Apple magazine, news magazine sort of function of it. So it's pretty cool. I think in some ways they add a few more sections, they'll be like the New York Times.
Oh, it's an aggregator. I mean, I think I like the fact that it aggregated it into one place, and not everybody wants to read all of those magazines at once, and it gives you a quick option to be able to, maybe it's something catches your eye, you want to grab a recipe and make some good dinners or lunches or breakfast.
There's a lot of salmon in there today.
Well, salmon is always the health.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind that Marty is starting a TikTok cooking show. Let's not forget that.
That's true.
So,
among all of his other podcasts.
yeah. Brian?
I just am glad to see, it's just a product that people enjoy, and it just gives more value for what people are subscribing to, or even not subscribing to. I saw the part in the article that says that some selected food articles and recipes are going to be made available for non-subscribers as well. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And the point, I think it was Marty made it, or I'm not sure who made it, about it being, aggregated from other sites that might, or other publications, that might be available in Apple News Plus, but it also just boils it down. Maybe it feels like the sports section of what used to be the newspaper, or the business section, or whatever other sections there used to be, that maybe you can transplant it into different categories and make it more accessible for the people that are really into that particular category.
Yeah, I mean, I like the layout of Apple News, and I just looked at it. Also, the sports icon down at the bottom looks like the icon for the sports app, and you can see, or at least I can see when I go there, it's got all of my stuff integrated into that section. So I think it's very cool.
Good. Well, then I'm glad to see it getting a thumbs up from this panel. That's great.
I can't find the reference right now, but there was some mention earlier about, this would be just perfect if somebody had, a speaker with a screen on it in the kitchen with recipes. So,
well, they did
That's
talk about it
in the. That's called an iPad.
They did talk about it in the article about it being sort of like having a cook's view, where you could have all the recipes up on it. And yeah, right. Yeah. I'm all about having a HomePod with a screen on it for that purpose.
Yeah, at least until you get the Apple Vision Pro, the new one.
Right.
Yeah, but Marty, here we go again. Not every product has to apply to everyone. I don't know how big that market is. Apple probably has some idea about it. And so I'm like you, I kind of struggle with, for lack of a better term, a cooking iPad robot kind of thing, but I don't know, because we don't know what else it might do. So
yeah, remember, Apple's not about, in some ways, Apple is not about finding out what you want. It's about telling you this is what you can have, and then you find out you want it.
Yeah, that's happened to me on numerous occasions.
Yeah, and once the S Lady is able to interact with apps better, then you should be able to make, more voice queries for recipes and help with recipes and conversions. And
I'm really curious to see about the next one, because I need somebody to tell me why this is or is not important. But the new iPhone 16e lacks ultra-wideband tracking and thread radio. My understanding is that this might cause it to be a little less trackable or a little less precise. But how much does that matter at this point?
I don't think it matters much, only because this is supposed to be a entry-level iPhone, and they had to cut some things back with the binning of the 18 processor, so it's not the same exact processor that's what's in the 16 or the 16 Pro, or 16. It's not the Pro, of course not. So they did incorporate this radio in the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, but then the whole 16 line has it except the 16e. So maybe it's some weird cost cutting. It's hard to say.
I think it is cost cutting. It's also to differentiate it, from higher end models. So
it's like MagSafe. It doesn't have MagSafe.
It's what do you want? Do you want low price, Mr. Customer, or do you want all these other features? We have different models. You make your choice.
Yeah.
The article's blaming it on the new cellular modem
Yeah,
that they're introducing. Yeah, that
Well,
prevents.
I thought ultra wideband was their own separate chip because they feature that in some of the iPhone introductions a couple years ago.
I mean, I've read so many things about the modem chip. One moment it seems to be really, really important. The next minute it's not quite as important. The next minute it's going to probably be integrated in with the main chips. I don't know. It feels like a bit of a moving target right now, trying to identify how important it is, and whether it has anything to do with this particular article.
Well, I think that in the fullness of time, having their own control, it's they can stop paying. They can stop buying silicon from Qualcomm. They probably still have to pay patent licensing rights, but then they'll have that ability. And again, they're TSMC's biggest customer, so they can get the chips fab there, and that'll save them money, which they can either use to fatten their margins or reduce price. I think it's a good sign that their modem, after all these years, is finally appearing in some Apple product. Maybe it can get better and good enough that in a year or two or three that it could replace the 5G modem chips that they have to buy from Qualcomm. That's speculation. The jury's out. We'll have to see how that happens. But certainly that will give them more control, which is what they like to do over their system. And I think it's analogous to dumping Intel and going to their own native ARM designs. Yes, they have certain IP payments, that they have to make, but they don't have to pay for whatever was the Intel margin markup. So for their processors, so they're able ultimately to either improve their bottom line or give them money that they can use to reduce the prices of some of the models. Because just look what they did with the MacBook Air when they came out with it. It was dramatically lower than things that were running Intel processors. So it's interesting. We'll have to see how this evolves in the next what we hear in WWDC or in the fall this year about iPhone, and then next year to see how it propagates outward.
Yeah. Jeff?
If you're someone who's interested in ultra-wideband and threads and MagSafe, if these are features that matter to you, this is not the phone for you, and you are not the market that Apple's going after with this phone. They can save money, and they can this is basically like if someone said, hey, let's take the iPhone 11 but modernize it, and we get the 16e. And I'm going to stop talking now because I don't want to steal any of Eric's comments.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Eric?
It's the first generation of the modem. You don't want to put that in every single product and then test it. So they can bring it out that has the basic required features. It apparently draws less power. So this is the perfect place to put it. If anything goes wrong, it doesn't cannibalize anything else. You haven't gotten past the point of no return. If it's successful, it could go into a whole pile of new things, such as maybe in a Mac at some point, or in an Apple Vision Pro. I keep hoping. So I think this is good. It can be a little less featured, but a solid product, and try it out, roll it out, let everybody get a feel for it, and then a little bit later come out with it in more products.
Brittany, I think, has a little bit of a contrasting opinion. Let's see. Her comment is the best theory that I've heard is that it's for enterprise customers, but I don't really think this has compromises that work for most consumers. She worries about the metaphorical aunt or uncle buying it without realizing that the features are missing. It's better screen, but no ultra-wide or MagSafe is a weird compromise to her. So, just another perspective.
I bet
Oh.
that aunt and uncle don't even know what MagSafe are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jeff, I bet you're right, except that they might not know them by name, but will they know it by function? And all of a
Probably
sudden
not.
they get,
Yeah, they might know it doesn't have. You have to plug a cable in instead of sticking it onto a charger device.
But
You
you
can still do that. It
Yeah.
just won't stick to it.
and you can always get a case.
Someone said that. Yeah, I think was Eric said that in the chat or Marty?
yeah. No, Marty, you want to
Marty.
expand on that?
Yeah. I'd heard that they had made MagSafe cases for 16E, and I wasn't exactly sure how they would work through that process, but I thought it was just spec. But then I went in and searched for 16E MagSafe cases. Everybody's making them.
Puts a magnet inside the case.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
And that's how
I
the
think they've had them
process
for
works.
Android for a long time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Brittany follows up with, I bought the quote, I bought this wallet that sticks to my phone, except it doesn't, unless you get one of the cases that Marty's referencing. So.
And to be fair, ultra wideband, if you're in a rural area, doesn't help you.
Good point. So I'm going to turn to our Apple Vision Pro owners here, David, Eric, and Marty, unless somebody else has acquired one recently, and ask what your thoughts are. On the hands-on with Apple Intelligence on Apple Vision Pro.
Go for it, Marty.
Yeah, the room went silent.
Thanks for passing that one to me, Dave.
Well, I haven't tried it yet, so I can't really make a comment other than read what the article says.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this article in Vision Profiles last night. The problem is the article makes it sound like it's all there and ready to go. And the three of us all have the 2.4, developer beta on, and I'm having a dog of a time finding things. I mean, Playgrounds comes up right away. It's an app that winds up getting into your deck. And so, it does what Playgrounds does, creates art that nobody wants to look at. But there are other kinds of things that I'm still having a hard time trying to figure out how they work. The big push in in a lot of these articles, and they carefully phrase them to say, coming in April, but it's on the developer beta. Well, it's not quite on the developer beta. And are we just going to have to wait for April to have all these things emerge when it goes to the public beta, or it goes to the final version of 2.4? But things like spatial gallery sound really exciting, but for the life of me, I can't find it anywhere in the headset. And there is an app called Spatial Gallery. It's not Spatial Gallery. It's like a Japanese anime kind of little squeaky mouses and things like that. It's not Spatial Gallery. So don't be fooled by that. And it's just, these articles are great. I think it indicates that Apple's going to do all these things, but for folks who are trying to test these things out, they're having a hard time finding it. Eric found more than I did.
I guess I'm not too worried about it. I mean, the beta is going to have several iterations as they work on things and add things. I think the big news is they brought it to the Apple Vision Pro. So basically, everything that can handle it has it. We know that there are going to be a bunch of bigger updates coming out. This is sort of the basic pieces that kind of bring it up to speed to match everything else. And I mean, some of the features that everyone has been waiting for, it's not out anywhere else either. So I'm not too worried. I think they'll finish sliding in all of the other components, and it'll get there. And I wasn't sure of that before they did this, so I'm still happy.
That's interesting, Eric. So you think this is a good indication that they're on track or on the track?
Yes.
Good.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media.
Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.